Microsoft counterparts in the chat. They can help answer questions, as well as Mary Beth will be probably diving and peeking in there if she can. Raise your hand to come off mute if you feel compelled to do that as well. And as we close out this session today, we always have a survey at the end so that you can give us feedback on how we're doing and about content you want to hear in the future. This helps us make sure we have the best and brightest folks here for you to help you become better and brighter at your company. Finally, we have a small token of appreciation for you joining us today. We're going to be doing a raffle towards the end of the session. The raffle will be using an app called Lucky Draw within the chat. Again, about the chat today. It's a Lucky Draw, by the way, is a Teams app. So if you want to use that for maybe one of your meetings later on, you may have that available to you in your tenant. So with that, I'm going to stop yabbering my mouth and introduce Mary Beth Kirk, Customer Success Manager here at Microsoft. Mary Beth, take us away.
Awesome. Thanks, Charles. Well, hello and welcome, everyone. Thanks for choosing to spend your time with us today as we talk about call quality, which is one of my very most favorite things to talk about. I have been at Microsoft for 6.5 years in various roles, and I am always excited to talk about quality. So I'm going to stop my video, start the sharing. We'll get started. I have a lot of content to cover today. Hopefully it's super useful to you. We would love to have a follow-up conversation with you on this topic. So as we kind of go along, make a note where things have piqued your interest, where you'd like to dive in a little deeper, and we'll definitely connect. So let me do this. Let me get the share going. You are taking advantage of the Teams webinar feature today. So hopefully that worked well for you as you join that joint experience. Know that webinar is built into Teams today as a fully baked feature. So hopefully you're utilizing that as well. Give me a thumbs up if you can see the content today. You should be able to use, I think, reactions in webinar. Excellent. So yeah, I am as part of the customer success technical strategy team, focused a lot on quality. Let me give you a little bit of an agenda today. We'll talk a little bit about why quality matters. We'll do a little quality 101 to level set kind of everybody at a basic level of some core elements of how Microsoft looks at quality, some of the tools that you have available in Teams. We'll talk about building data, and we'll kind of wrap with that end user experience and adoption idea and kind of what the data is that you have available to you from that perspective. So this is a more technical session. It's a higher level, and again, we'd love to dig in deeper as you find things that interest you, but today let's talk about quality. So I mentioned it's one of my favorite things to talk about. Quality first and last should be something that you're focused on. I love to talk about this topic because it's so impactful. Building good tenant health is absolutely foundational to your success in Teams, whether that's meetings or calling or live events, contact center, whatever you're building on top of it, it's really fundamental to have good tenant health. And what I love about it is small changes have dramatic impact. So if you're looking for impact this year in your job, get on board with the quality train, because that's where you can really make changes that affect call quality and reliability across your entire organization. And we look at that based on things like media quality and reliability. We're going to dive into that and show you the data that you have available as an IT pro to look at that. User feedback. How do we look at that from a data perspective, not just the kind of anecdotal hallway conversation, but what do we have from a user feedback perspective in Teams? It's important to do proactive health analysis. So I know we're all doing a lot of firefighting. We're all fielding tons and tons of requests about how do I do this or this didn't work, but getting in front of that early is super important, again, for your success. And then the adoption and end user satisfaction. It doesn't make a difference what we do if nobody's using it. So we got to make sure that it's well adopted, that they're well trained, and that they're satisfied with their experience. So we'll talk about these kind of central tenets today. So first, we're going to do a quick poll question. So check out the chat. I'd love to know, at your company, if you're responsible for troubleshooting and reporting call quality in Teams. Or do you lead a team that's responsible for this? So pop that in the chat. And kind of as those answers start to populate, I'll lean on Charles to give us some feedback. on where we're at, because I just love to know if this is part of your core responsibility. So let's move into that first section, Quality 101. Again, let's level set and make sure we're all on the same page when we start to talk about quality. At Microsoft, we really like to look at this in two fundamental ways. And when I look at this slide in my mind, I kind of think of the scales of justice. And on one side, there's the service metrics, and on the other side, there's the user experience. And as I mentioned previously, if those two things aren't aligned, we are not going to be very successful. So from a service metrics perspective, we start to think of a lot of network related data. We have telemetry in Teams like jitter and packet loss and round trip time, things that affect call quality, video quality, sharing quality. And we have classifiers within our tooling so that you can look at those things specifically in regard to audio, video, and screen sharing. We talk about reliability. And when we use that term, we're talking about media drop and setup failures. A drop failure is I joined a call or I started a meeting in Teams and I was suddenly and unexpectedly dropped. Not I got frustrated and hung up, but I was suddenly and unexpectedly dropped. So a lot of times we refer to this as a mid-call failure. Setup failures, I clicked the button and it didn't work. I could not join that meeting. I could not establish Teams media. I couldn't establish a screen share. It failed to set up. So we look at those two things really specifically in Teams. We have data around endpoints. So what device or headset was the user using? Because it matters, right? What were they using, a certified headset, or were they using their kid's Turtle Beach gaming headset? You know, what were they using that might have affected their experience? Were they connected to wired or Wi-Fi? And if they were on Wi-Fi, was it 2.4 or 5 gigahertz? Because if you're a network person, you know that matters. From a client perspective, we have additional telemetry around what client version they are. The latest and greatest is what's absolutely recommended. But here you have some validation. So if you don't have another good tool in Teams today to validate client versioning, you can see that kind of data in the tools that we'll review today. And then with VPN split tunnel, if you have it implemented, there's a good way for you to validate whether that's actually working. And if you don't have it today, there's some data there that might bring that to the forefront. So looking at VPN traffic for quality and understanding that experience has not been very good for your users, and you should consider split tunnel. So that's the net metric side, the data side, all the networky things, physical phones, firmware, hardware, all that stuff. Then we have the user experience. Do they know how to use Teams? Does Teams make their job easier? Are they confident in being able to rely on it for important meetings? For both of these, we have a ton of data for you in the tool set that you can, again, look at reactively or proactively to make sure that your company is successful. How does Microsoft classify calls as good or poor? So as we look through these tools, you'll see that we make some classifications. And it's based on these 5 metrics: jitter, packet loss, round trip time, NMOS, and concealed sample ratio. If any one of these exceeds its recommended threshold, we'll flag the call as poor. A lot of times it's more than one. So if you have high latency, you'll also have high jitter. So you'll see more than one, but it only takes one to flip that switch as poor. So I include this just as a reference so that as you're doing some planning, as you're looking, troubleshooting, or doing return to office outreach planning, this is what we're looking at. Now this slide is really your homework slide and your core. We'll put this right up front. We'll make this available later. These are the 7 configuration areas that you should really focus on for the highest level of success. This is really based on our work within our own Microsoft environment and the thousands of customer engagements we've done. Number 1 is the easy one, or it should be ensuring that the right ports and protocols are open. Today, there are 3 subnet ranges and 4 UDP ports that you need for Teams. If you look at the IPs page, it's a little scary. There's a lot of information there. But know that at the root, there's 3 subnet ranges, 4 UDP ports, and good old TCP 443, which is probably already open. But this is what you'll want to check first and foremost for every firewall, every site in your environment. Number 2, critically important also, bypassing proxy and deep packet inspection. You'll see this as a recommendation. I would say it is required. If I could change the docs today, I would do it, because fundamentally it affects quality so much in a negative way that you want to be sure and bypass proxy and deep packet inspection. This can be a challenging conversation with security teams. And if you need some backstop on that, your Microsoft account team would be happy to help lead those conversations. Split tunnel, I talked about a little bit already. If you're not using VPN split tunnel today, you almost certainly have users with a poor quality experience. When we loop that traffic back to the VPN, through the VPN, through concentrators that are probably overly congested already, it is almost always a poor experience. And we can see that in the data. So you don't have to take my word for it. Let's go look at your tenant data. Let's filter on those VPNs and see if that is indeed true. Makes a great case for VPN split tunnel. Same challenge you can come into with security, but again, lots of documentation. We'd be happy to support you in those conversations. Number 4 is around client. So Teams should automatically update itself every couple of weeks. We're on a release schedule for that. We have seen that antivirus and DLP scanning can do a few things. It can affect call quality, but it can also cause Teams clients not to update properly. So look at that. There's documentation out there for that, and I think these are all hyperlinked. And then 5, 6, and 7, really recommended, nice to have kind of things. Local DNS resolution, super important. Again, if we're looping traffic back, if we're hairpinning it back, we're introducing latency, causing quality issues. Taking the shortest path to the internet, we could talk about this pretty exhaustively. We've done a really good job at Microsoft putting our data centers closer to you with our Azure front doors and lots of different things, but we want to make sure that you've got the shortest path to the internet to, again, reduce latency and improve quality. And then our friend QoS. If you're a network person, you're already shaking your head at me. It's okay. Do this where it makes sense. This is not absolutely required in every scenario. Do it where it makes sense. If you know you've got sites with low bandwidth, let's prioritize Teams media over other workloads on the network to ensure that they've got all the bandwidth they need and they'll have a great experience. So take this as your,
Just so you know that getting back to that first poll of who's responsible in their organization for the call quality, majority, 83% of the folks are on this call. So you're definitely speaking their language. So then you know that.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Charles. And I see, I haven't been watching the chat, but I see Shannon's question about, is this important for employees working from the office? Yes and no. So absolutely. A lot of this has to do with whether or not you're sitting inside a corporate WAN or not. But things like antivirus, VPN, especially where we've got users working remotely still, a lot of this will apply either or both. So great question there. So let's move on a little bit. I'm so worried I'm going to run out of time today because I get really chatty on this subject. I just love it. Let's talk about the tools and Teams. So where can I go look at some of this data? We're going to start with another quick poll. And actually, it's kind of a pop quiz. Call quality data can be leveraged in which of the following tools? So we'll pop that. Give me your best response, and then we'll dig into it and give you the answer. So is it CQD Web UI, Teams Admin Center, Power BI through Direct Query, the Graph API, or all of the above? See, one response, two responses. All right, let's keep going. The tools and teams, again, I'm going to kind of split this slide a little bit. We have two major tools for you to look at. One is Call Analytics. One is CQD, or Call Quality Dashboard. We're going to drill into both of these. What I want you to know here is Call Analytics lives in the Teams Admin Center. You don't really find a reference to Call Analytics anymore. It used to be its own web UI. It was its own tool. It was later integrated into the Teams Admin Center. But if you're looking at docs, you'll still find documents like how to troubleshoot poor quality using Call Analytics. When we're talking about Call Analytics, it's that piece in the Admin Center. And I'll show you some examples. We use Call Analytics for end user troubleshooting. So think of Sally, the CIO, or Bob, the CTO, has a bad meeting or call, and it's up to you and your team to figure out what happened. I usually start with Call Analytics. There are some other choices, and we'll talk about that too, but that's kind of where its sweet spot is to do those individual investigations. There you can find data for up to 28 days. You'll find all kinds of information about that particular meeting or call, like what device were they using, what network were they connected to, how were they connected to the network, how was their call quality, and all of those network telemetry metrics like jitter and packet loss and round trip. Call quality data, on the other hand, is a way for you to look at your entire organization for up to 12 months. So there I've got 12 months worth of data that I can start to look at trending information. So how was call quality over the last 12 months? Was it better, worse, or about the same month over month? So it's like going to the optometrist, better, worse, or about the same. I can start to look at that reliability trend. So if I made a change on the network, or as users started to return to the office, is quality better? Is reliability better? Month over month, week over week, day over day? I can drill into the data to that level of granularity, even hour after hour over hour if you needed to. There you get things like device versioning and endpoints and a bunch of PII data, which we'll talk about in a minute. So let's drill in a little bit more on that Call Analytics piece. I mentioned it used to be its own tool. Now it's built into the Teams Admin Center. So if you're looking at the Admin Center, you just search for the user. There's a couple of different ways to do that. Find the user, just as if you were going to assign them a policy or look at anything. And if you drill into their call history, you'll see all of the history of all their calls for the last 28 days. Maybe 30 days. Let's see. There's a bit about, you see call history for 30 days, but you see PII data for 28 days. It gets a little confusing there, but this is kind of a short-term thing. Hopefully you're not troubleshooting a specific caller meeting that was longer than 30 days ago. They're calling you real quick. This data is available in the tool within about 15 minutes. So it is real time, and I'll show you that in the next slide, but also you will see the data within about 15 minutes. So you can go and find that probably by the time they have a cup of coffee and call you. You'll see here that you get a good little summary of 7-day quality. So again, that good, poor, unclassified. So I showed you that slide. How do we quantify calls as good or poor? Based on those 5 network metrics. That's where that comes from. And you can drill into any one of these to get more information. Who joined the call? When did they join? How did they join? What network were they on? What network were they connected to? How were they connected to the network? So that'll help you drill in deeper. And a lot of times, if you are working with Microsoft support, they'll ask you for this information. So there is an export option. You can export this to Excel, attach that to your support case, and you're good to go. Gives you lots of good detail here. Now, I mentioned that you can also look at real-time data, and this is fairly new, and I think it's still tagged as in preview. So same scenario. Bob, the CTO, Sally, the CIO, calls and says, maybe their assistant calls you and says, hey, we've got a major problem on this important call. I need you to go look at it. Now today in the Teams Admin Center, again, you search for that user and you can see their recent meetings, which includes anything they're currently active in, as well as anything in the past 24 hours. So you can see here in the top line, this meeting started at this time People started joining at this time. They've got 6 participants. It is indeed a conference call, and it is currently in progress. If I click on the meeting ID, I see a list of participants, and again, all of that good network-related telemetry that helps you try and troubleshoot really quickly on the fly what could be causing a problem. And remember that the person who reported the issue may not be the person who's causing the issue. You can also see their additional call history that we just discussed on the previous slide. Let me see if there's anything else I want to call out here. This is currently only available for scheduled meetings. So you won't see PSTN here today. You won't see peer-to-peer. It is for scheduled meetings, but that's definitely on the roadmap and coming soon. And additionally, the Teams web client, including VDI, will not show up here in this view. You will see call history, but not available for this real-time analytics. So just another little tidbit about good port unclassified. Good or poor comes from, if you've been doing this for a while, and if you've looked at this, give me a thumbs up. If you've looked at this before, you may come across a scenario where a call was marked as good, but the user says it was poor. I usually say, were they not telling you the truth? No, they were telling you the truth. They had a poor experience. It's your job to figure out what it was. We do this good poor classification based on an average. So if the average duration of the call was good, we'll mark that call as good. So think about a scenario where I'm on a call for an hour like we are today. For 59 minutes, that call is the best call I've ever been on. Great bandwidth, network is solid, headset's working. But for 1 minute, I have an issue. For that 1 minute, it's the worst call I've ever been on. But based on the average duration of the call, we'll mark the call as good. So in that scenario, that's where it gets important to dig into the details and find out things like what was their jitter, packet loss, and round trip time, both as an average and as a max value. And we show that to you in the telemetry. You may also come across a bunch of unclassifieds or things where you look at records and there's just missing data. In those instances, it is because we didn't get the data. There's 2 big reasons why that happens. A lot of times, unclassified streams come from really short calls, something less than 60 seconds. Or in a situation where, like today, you've joined a call and you remain on mute the entire call. If you're muted, there's a keep alive signal going, but there's no media going back and forth because you're muted. So in those scenarios, there could be a gap in data.
Hey, Mary Beth.
Yes.
While you take a pause and a breath, there's, I think Jake has a question. He's got a hand raised here. Maybe we can facilitate that just really briefly. I think it might be related to something you just previously said. Jake, let me see if I can your mic. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I guess you had mentioned earlier about the call quality. It doesn't work for PSTN calls. But I was wondering, what about like live events or webinars? Does that reporting report for people that attended those events by chance?
Yeah, great question. So we were talking about the real time, but you'll have some analytics in a live event and in a webinar, especially in a live event. You've kind of got that concept of the inner meeting. So all of your presenters and organizers join the inner meeting on a live event. And then we use some broadcasting to do all of the external. So I can see everybody on that internal meeting, the producers and organizers. But once we hit the CDN and we kind of start to go out to external users, that's where we have a bit of a gap today. We just don't have that telemetry. So it's kind of a yes and no. You see some things, but not all things today.
Fair enough. Thank you.
You bet. Picking up one more just quick reference slide. I talked about call analytics being a 28-day tool, and that has a lot to do with the EUII, PII data that we reveal. So GDPR compliance and things like that, we have to scrub that data after 28 days. So if you've ever wondered, here's what Microsoft classifies as EUII data. And when I look at this, think about how you could leverage this information to do your investigations. So if I've got users with poor quality, I can look at their UPN. I can know exactly who they are, what their machine endpoint name is, what their full IP address is, what their MAC address is. If I'm doing troubleshooting on Wi-Fi, I got the BSSID of the wireless access point. So lots of good information there, but it is stripped after 28 days from all tools. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Another poll on a scale of 1 to 5. How confident are you navigating CQD data today? I don't know if we answered our previous poll. The answer to the previous poll was all of the above. So you can find CQD data, Call Analytics, CQD with Power BI with Data Query, and the Graph API.
And that's a miss on me, Mary Beth. That's the only test I've ever seen before that everyone got 100%. It's 100%. Everyone
Yay! I thought it might get you with the Graph API if you weren't familiar, but good job. If all else fails, go with all of the above, or option C, right?
Option C, yeah.
All right, cool. So I'm seeing we got a pretty strong crowd here, so good deal. So hopefully I can show you a couple more tips. So let's talk for just a quick minute about CQD. And remember that I told you CQD data helps you look at trending analysis data across your entire organization for up to 12 months. And there's a couple of different, we just talked about 3 different ways for you to do that. We're going to talk about 2 today. One is the Call Quality Dashboard web UI. It is located in the Teams Admin Center. And I give a little shout out here to our Skype for Business Server 2019 on-prem customers because they don't get a lot of love. But this is supported for 2019 on-prem still through the Call Data Connector. But for the rest of us on Teams, know again that we get this data within about 30 minutes from the end of a call through our NRT data feed, our near real-time data feed. And you can look at call quality data either in the web UI here that I'm showing or through Power BI. We're going to talk about both. So if you look at your Teams Admin Center today, if you're playing along at home, expand out the Call Analytics and Reports and go to Call Quality Dashboard. You can also navigate to it directly with cqd.teams.microsoft.com and even shorter, aka.ms/CQD. So what does it look like? Here's kind of the basics. This is a good tool, I think, if you're, let me take a step back because I know I've probably got some internal folks at Microsoft going, oh my gosh, why is she even showing this? It was our first tool before Power BI came along. So it is slowly, I think, probably being deprecated. I still use it for some reasons, but it is still there and you will still find references to it in our documentation. So that's a big reason why I want you to know it's here. I like it a lot for entry-level Tier 1 help desk. And again, you may find some value in it too, but know that when you go into your call quality dashboard, you start to see information that looks a bit like this. You see trending reports. And again, we talked about trending analysis. So I can see with this customer, wow, they really did something back in January or February that impacted audio quality in a really good way. They were up here around 3% for audio quality, made some dramatic changes that lowered that to less than 2% month over month. I can see audio quality day over day. So again, if you implement a change over the weekend and you want to track that, how did it impact quality day over day? You've got some good graphs here that help you do that. Down below that, you'll see server client. These are conferences. Anytime a server is involved, that's the media processor on the Microsoft side. So server client means conference calls only. So we've pivoted that same data to show you just conferences, month over month, day over day. If we scroll down a little bit, we'll see client to client, those peer-to-peer calls, and a daily trend for peer-to-peer calls. Now that's kind of interesting that in the trending data, conferences were far more affected than peer-to-peer. But that's part of your investigation, part of your analysis. Standing desk is doing its own thing here. Now, if we look up at the top, you've got a drop-down menu here. This is the summary reports page. You've also got some tabs here where you can drill into some of those different things. You've got a nice legend here about good, poor, and unclassified. And if you hover over any of these, you'll get some additional detail for that month. But if we hit that drop-down menu, you're going to see multiple other reports that you can kind of drill through. One is specifically for the help desk. There's one for client versions. There's a quality or reliability. For this, I'm going to choose the quality of experience reports. I kind of like that one because it's got a nice tree over to the right where I can kind of pick and choose what I want to look at, especially if you're just getting started. A nice legend at the top where I can see things like good, poor, and unclassified, audio poor percentage, setup failures and drop failures, that reliability piece, as well as rate my call, which is the end user feedback part. We haven't talked about that yet. But as we scroll down, again, you see nice month-over-month graphs. You'll see reliability graphs. And again, if you hover over one of these, you get more information. Rate my call right below that. You can look at client and device information. I mentioned that. So what client types are being utilized in my environment. So here I can see I've got some Project Rigel, I've got some Citrix VDI, I've got some VMware, I've got a HoloLens out there. So high level trending information. I'm throwing this in as well. There is kind of a one doc to rule them all. It is the QER guide. So if you haven't been to QER guide yet, that answers a lot of questions about how does Microsoft quantify a call as poor. A lot of the things I cover in this session today are at aka.ms/QER guide. That's out on docs. And then additionally, there are some templates for the web UI I was just showing you to help you drill in a little deeper. So here's some examples down below. Good trending data. You get them in two forms. You kind of get this bar chart, and then you can drill into a table and start to pivot data. Show me the top 10 worst subnets. Show me the top 10 best subnets. Pivot those by poor streams. Pivot those by jitter. But another way to look at this quality data. Those templates will help you get started past what I just showed you with those kind of basic reports. So let's start. I wanted to share this as well. So you may be wondering, can I do some RBAC control for this data? Yes, you can. There are multiple permissions available today with more to come. We get lots of questions around, can I get really granular with access? I only want certain admins in certain parts of the world to see their data and not everybody else's. We're working on it, but today you do have RBAC controls here. And essentially you're controlling that access to EUII data and the ability to upload billing data, which we'll talk about too. So let's talk about the best and most exciting part of this before I run out of time, which is CQD plus Power BI. You can use Power BI to ingest CQD data, the same data that we're looking at in the web UI, in really kind of new and exciting ways. So Microsoft has published 8 Power BI reports today. If you are a fan of the QER reports that Teams Engineering uses and is hosted on GitHub, give me a thumbs up on that if you know what I'm talking about. You'll be glad to know, and some folks on the internals on the Microsoft side will be glad to know that QER PBI template has been added to the official list of Microsoft reports. So now out on CQD Power BI templates, out on docs, that specific template, the one at the end of this list, is now included as an official Microsoft report. And that's the one we'll focus on today. But know that you've got a lot of choices out there for templates. To use these templates, you need to install the Power BI connector on your local machine. It is very simple. We give you everything you need, no extra crazy licensing required. It's all available to all customers. Get this Power BI connector going on your local machine, and you too can start to use Power BI desktop or over the web to look at CQD data. Kind of one of the really cool benefits here is once you have a Power BI report you love, you can publish that to your Power BI instance, share it with a bunch of people, post it as a tab in Teams, and everybody can take advantage of the same report, which wasn't the case with the CQD web UI I just showed you a minute ago. So let's take a look at what that looks like. We'll do a little show and tell here. When you look at this last report, let me scroll back just a minute. When you look at this one, the QER PBI template, this was a really homegrown project out of Teams Engineering on a team that I was working on as a result of customer feedback and as a result of our own need to be able to do these investigations. So as you fire this up, get your Power BI connector going, download this PBI template, you'll start to have access to this kind of data. My favorite tab to look at first and foremost is this media health tab. Look at all the information you get here. And just let me do a quick run through. Up at the top, these are the core KHIs that we stress with customers as being the most important. If you've got these things all in the green, green is good, red is bad, based on recommended thresholds, overall, your user should be having a good quality experience. So things like poor audio rate, poor video rate, poor freeze rate, sharing. Then we get into those reliability pieces, drop failure, setup failure, and rate my call feedback. So this is one I would look at every day, once a week, once a month at the very least, to make sure that you're green across the board. Down below, good trending data. So I can look and see, like, for instance, if we're looking at the middle here, we were trending a little bit high, still under the threshold, which is represented by that red bar. But all of a sudden we made a change the week of May the 8th that really reduced the number of media failures we were having. So that really reinforces that what you did was the right thing. Notice over on the left, lots of little jelly beans to pivot this data. So right now I'm looking at Teams only data and just for conferences. I've filtered out anything peer-to-peer. And I'm also looking just at meetings that involved a Windows client. But you can change all of that. You can pivot that data. So if I wanted to change it and look at conferences that were over wired because I've got users returning to the office, I want to see how's that meeting experience for users who have returned to the office and are connected over the wire. Now in this scenario, I could have some home users connected over wire at their houses, but that's less likely. But I've been able to quickly pivot that data and show just meetings over the wire.
Hey, Mary Beth.
Yeah.
Looking at a comment from Elmer Gonzalez, it says it relies a lot more on the Power BI reporting than the CQD. Is there operationally a preference or preferable position we take as Microsoft, or does it really matter which one? What's pros and cons? Just really quickly, if you can, like 30 seconds on that one.
I think it is easier to use. I think that there is a CQD with Power BI is a really powerful combination. And I think that is the way that Microsoft is moving. I think eventually we will see a retirement of the CQD web UI. I think our investments are absolutely going into CQD web improvements with the partnership of Power BI. So I think you're in the right spot, Elmer. I think stay there. And for those of you who haven't dipped a toe yet into Power BI, now is the time, because I think that is the way of the future. Great question.
No, great question.
Here I just quickly pivoted, same thing. Show me the meetings all on Wi-Fi. So essentially a bunch of people working from home and those people who have returned to the office but are connected to the Wi-Fi. So show me that too. What does that look like from a quality perspective? You can pivot by, I mentioned that we were previously pivoted and the default is to show you Teams on Windows, but you could absolutely say, hey, I want to see all of the meetings that were conducted over the wired that involve Citrix VDI, for instance. Easy peasy, choose the right filters. And because of the direct query nature of Power BI, it's going to take a minute. It takes a little bit for us to go back to the SQL database and regenerate all of these reports. So pack your patience. There is that, but it is well worth the wait. Some additional reports, and I'm going to have to pick up the pace of it, but I showed you, hey, you've got audio health issues. Well, how do I know who's affected? Like, okay, great. It shows that it's in the red. Now what? You can look at the audio health tab to get more information at a granular level on where those problems are occurring. So here at the top again, lots of nice filters. I have a 7-day view, and know that all of this is open source. You can change this if you want a 14-day view, 28-day view, whatever you want to do. Definitely change it. But here I've got a breakdown of over the last 7 days, audio health, wired, Wi-Fi, and then broken out into that 5.0 gigahertz or 2.4. Now, again, I want to look to see where are the problems really at. I saw that I was red, but where? Over on the left, you'll see this audio quality by country and by subnet. If I expanded out the US, for instance, I start to see all the subnets. We get user count, good streams, poor streams, and then we kind of do the math for you there. All color-coded. Red is bad, green is good. You could have a really large user count who don't make very many calls. You could have a really small user count that make a bunch of calls. That's why we include both. But here I can start to drill in and go, oh, okay, I see. I've got a subnet here with X amount of users that has 6.81% audio port failure. Let me go investigate that. I've also got great information down below about ASN. So maybe I've got a particular carrier or ASN that's having issues. So it's, again, peeling the onion, trying to figure out where there are problems. As you look at one of those subnets, okay, I saw it was red. I want more information. I can right click and drill through. And there I can look at just audio health, reliability, video, or sharing. So drilling in a little bit deeper, show me that particular subnet and the audio health details related to that subnet only. So here's a view of what that looks like. So again, lots more information. So this is just that one subnet. How many streams? What was the overall port quality? What kind of meetings were hosted on that subnet? Were they wired or Wi-Fi? Did I have more problems on the inbound or the outbound stream? What were the network telemetry like, that jitter, packet loss, and round trip time? Let me see. In this view, I do not have permissions to look at UPN data in this tenant, but you will see the UPN of every user on the subnet. So that matters. Maybe you've got a small subnet with a small user base, but if it is the C-levels, if it's your executives, it suddenly becomes a really important subnet. So you can see that UPN data here. Another key one to look at is the TCP versus UDP tab here. Good filtering, good trending analysis, show me where in the world it is, a really cool heat map. So I can quickly look at this and go, okay, North America looks good, but definitely Central and South America, I have a little bit of red, and I know this is small for you guys, but you can expand this on your end and find out where these problem spots are, as well as more detail on who's affected. Give me the UPN, tell me exactly who is connecting over TCP so that I can go fix this. We talked a lot about VPN earlier, and there's a good note at the top here about how do we report on estimated VPN. If the endpoint's local IP address and the IP subnet match, it's a good indicator that this user is connected over VPN. So if you've implemented split tunnel, go check it. See if you've still got users connecting over VPN. If you haven't implemented it yet, go look at the quality numbers. If you're red across the board, it's time to start thinking about it. Client versions as well. So again, we talked about that a little bit. Let me see how those client versions are doing. Are they updating as they should be? And then some kind of fun stuff down at the bottom from a networking perspective, where we give you some info about people who have insufficient CPU, who have detected network delay, or who have 5 roaming disconnects. So they've tried over 5 times while they were roaming to connect and failed to. So really cool data here. Again, if any of this really has you fired up, would love to spend some time with you offline to look at your client's tenant data. I know we're going through this quick, but definitely reach out. And then last but not least here, client investigations. I need to drill into a particular caller meeting and find out what happened. In this view, you can search by user, by subnet, by conference ID or meeting ID. Good notes down here about where those 2 pieces of data come from. Once you find that and you identify the call, you get a tremendous amount of data about that particular caller meeting. When did it start? When did it end? What kind of media did it have? Audio, video, screen sharing? What tenant was it hosted in? Tons and tons of data. Who was on the call? When did they join? When did they start? What device were they connected to? What was their IP address? What port did they connect to? What ISP were they using? Lots and lots of data as we scroll. This might be our last poll question. How can I identify the subnets internal to my network? So as I start to return to the office, How can I filter this data based on just who's in the office? I want to see how is their experience. I'll give you the answer. It's the building data file. You can upload a building data file into CQD so that you can pivot on managed versus unmanaged or internal versus external networks. This is different than the E911 data that you're entering or location data in Office 365, but it's similar data. So if you've started that exercise, you can definitely use some of that homework that you've already done. You upload a CSV file into the web UI, and it looks like this. All of these bolded fields are required, and this really allows you to pivot data in a different way to see exactly what you need to see. Show me poor quality in Houston, Texas, in Building 4. Or if I'm looking at quality all up, wow, I can see that 10.16.1 has really poor quality. I'm not the network person. I don't know where that is, but with a building data file, I can quickly see, oh, that's in Chicago at such and such site in building whatever. So that's the big reason why you'll want to upload building data file. You can also include VPN information. So that can be super helpful too. So be creative in these network names, put in things that make sense to you, put valuable things in there so that as you're looking at these reports, it'll be quick and easy for you to process and identify where you've got issues. One more poll question. Have you uploaded your building data file? You get a lot of data without it, but with it, it becomes much more manageable and usable. We'll wrap with end user experience and adoption. I mentioned that we have data around the end user experience, and that comes through the Rate My Call tool. So you've seen it at the end of occasional calls. You will get presented with a survey. How was the call quality? We do that about 1 in every 10 calls, about 10% of the time. If you're looking at data, anything 1 or 2 stars from the user is considered poor. So there's no network telemetry there. It is absolutely end user experience. 1 or 2 stars is poor. And you can pivot on that. When they select anything less than a perfect 4 stars, they're presented with some additional opportunity to enter feedback. And you, through reporting, have access to that. So you can go and say, hey, show me the top 100 users who rated calls as poor in the last 30 days. Give me their UPN. Tell me exactly what they reported. Let me go look. Is it a network issue? Is it a training issue? What is it? Because I want to go fix this. Conversely, run one that's the top 100 users who identified a call as good. Make them your quality champions. They're 11 teams. They think things are great. Recruit them to tell a friend. Where do you go from here? I'll include some additional resources for you to do some more studying. Thanks for joining us today on this call. I know you care about your readiness, so we'll put some additional detail in here. With that, I'll wrap up. I know that was fast and furious. Again, I'll reiterate, we would love to have more conversations with you around this. Congratulations to our drawing winners. And I'll just pause to see if I've missed questions, if there's additional questions, and do some closing statements. Thanks so much.
Looking at the chat, I think Pratik has been a superstar. He's been out there like knocking out the questions that they come up. If anyone does have questions, they can raise your hand, or we can you can send an email to myself or someone on the team, and we'll get back to you. But it looks like Pratik was actually rock star in the background, kind of knocking things out. Mary Beth.
Awesome. Pratik is amazing. Has a ton of experience in this area. So super glad he was a moderator for us today.
Yeah, and yeah, congratulations to Jake and Laura. And I am not going to butcher that name. So
what did they win? Did they get candy? Is that what we got?
Yes, they will get a Sugar Wish e-gift and something they can eat candy and sweets. Or I think there's healthy choices too if you don't want sweets.
I just want candy.
Of course.
That's awesome. Don't miss your prize. I have used Sugar Wish myself, and it's really a fun thing to do.
Oh yeah, and as Chrissy says, you can get tea, which I'm a tea drinker as well. So, with that, Mary Beth, you want to close out, and then Doug, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, I just want to thank you again for being a part of this. I hope that it was super helpful to you. I encourage you to go out, download the CQD connector, and start to play around with Power BI. It is an incredibly powerful tool that will allow you to look at data in really new and exciting ways, whether you're just implementing Teams, whether you've been on Teams through the pandemic, whether you're planning for return to office, whatever that scenario is. I look at quality first and last and everywhere in between because it's fundamental to your success.
So yeah, again, like I said, we'll thank you for the 100th time. You guys' time is very valuable to us and to yourselves, so we know that. So I really appreciate that. We all appreciate that, actually. Again, if you want to hear more about RCG events happening in the future, please go to rcgevents.com. I posted it in a link, but it's a very simple URL to remember. And with that, I will give you guys back a whopping 3 minutes of your day. Thank you very much, and we'll see you at the next one.